No, thank you very much to Centro Nacional de la Conserva, la Tecnología y la Conserva, and for me it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I want you all to think about, during these next 15 minutes, about your role and about your impact, because many of the people we're always listening to, and for the last 100 years was always about what is in it for me. And I always believe that what is in it for us. So think about your role, because the word of today and this keynote is about collaboration. It's about the global food markets. How do we change? ¿Cómo cambiamos? This one. Thank you very much. So for me, this is where when I came to Murcia, and to be in Murcia today is an honor, because people are always asking me where I live, and I say I hide in Murcia. So when I came to Murcia in 1997, it was with a clear vision that I wanted to start my first food tech company, as Paco was saying about premium ingredients. So from 1997 to 2002, we actually started with the purpose of Kill the Black Box. And Kill the Black Box was about transparency in global supply chains that I think is fundamental, we'll come back to. So in 2004, we actually decided to build what today I call a static factory. And we all know the result of static factories, because the future of food, that is what we talk about today, is not about big centralized factories. Think about Nespresso in Switzerland. How can you take coffee as a commodity ingredient, bring it from around the world to the most expensive country in the world, in Switzerland, put it into capsules and send it out to the rich people in the world? That's certainly not how I see the future. So we decided in 2004, when we had the inauguration the 1st of February with the president of the Murcian community, Ramon Luis Valcárcel, and the Danish ambassador, I called my engineers in and said, actually, this static factory, with all the robotization, all the capabilities, after spending 3 years and 15 million euros, we decided to Kodak it. So if we actually said that the future of food had to do with not centralized factories, what was the alternative? So we had to start thinking about a small company in Murcia with less than 50 people, how we actually created the future. And that is again about where collaboration comes into the equation. None of us in the extreme complex agri-food industry can create the future alone. So over these last, let's say, nearly 20 years, we knew that we were touching upon 3 specific areas. One area was, what if we are building factories in a way that actually changed the paradigm of what a factory is? And the first thing we started talking about with the engineers is that who can build the world's first portable powder blending, packaging, and quality control factory in a container? And when something does not exist, you have to invent it. So we actually invented the modular factory, as you can see here. And suddenly we could actually go anywhere in the world with this plant, because in 6 months we can set up a company, we can find a building, we can install the plant, and this is actually what we did in Polígono Este de Murcia. So we actually made a simulation between 2005 and 2008, where we actually rented a building for 2,000 euros a month. We installed a food factory inside, and we actually simulated exactly the same results that were coming out from a big factory of 15 million euros that took 3 years. But of course, the first deployment we had to do in 2011 was looking back and say, now what does this tool in the toolbox serve us for? And we were capable of thinking about, actually, to be competitive in the world in certain areas and recipes, we decided to deploy the first hub in India. So when you go to India, we knew that the second problem was that when you go far away, you have no control over the supply chains. So we had to start digitizing food quality. And what could we do? We looked around for technologies. We found out that there was a technology that's been around for 30, 40 years underutilized that is called near-infrared spectroscopy. We also found out that the equipments were very expensive. They were very difficult for understanding for the public, so we decided to design a software on our own that could run on top of that to be much more user-friendly, that is digitized food quality. And then on top of that, we said, Now we actually have the factory. Now we can digitize input and output. What is the next step? A global replication model. I call it the Coca-Cola paradigm or the McDonald's paradigm or even the Amazon or the Apple paradigm. So we started innovating around the replication model. So after deploying our last hub in Colombia in 2018, and today, let's say in 23, we have been perfecting a replication model built on digitized food quality, decentralized food production, and this replication model actually have made us launch what we today call food as a service. So back to what is the problem in the world, because when you start in Murcia and when you're a small medium enterprise and suddenly you become a multinational, we are still today less than 200 people. We are built on collaboration, and this report came out of World Economic Forum, where I have the pleasure to be a part of the advisory board for the next 3 years. But the problem is in the world today and in the world of food that it has taken the big companies 100 years to produce less than 20% of the world's food, but they take 80% of the value. So the other side of the coin is that the world of food are small, medium enterprises. And what happens today, as this report is referring to, that made an investigation of 800 people in small, medium enterprises in the food industry, that actually the biggest worry of all of them is that SMEs worldwide are fighting for survival. So how can they not be fighting for survival if 80% of the world's food is produced by 500 million farmers and small, medium enterprises that only take 20% of the value? It is obvious that the world has a huge problem. So facing these problems is collaboration again. So I want to take the opportunity to call actually to my personal assistant today, and the opportunities of actually getting help to collaborate are infinite. So Joaquin, maybe let's ask ChatGPT if BlendHub can change the actual food system and see what comes out of that. While Joaquin is finding our online assistant that, by the way, all of you have available for free, the funny thing when you start asking your online assistant questions, it's actually the biggest access to information online today, end of the story. And it's funny that you don't necessarily need to take every single line as a given, but actually if we take and we say, can BlendHub change the actual food system? Then it starts telling us what BlendHub is about. And I don't want to go into the details, except that BlendHub is specialized in providing customized food powder blending solutions. BlendHub's approach to food production revolves around developing and manufacturing food powders. But in the end of it, if you go a little bit further down, Joaquin, while BlendHub's model has the potential to bring about positive changes, it is crucial to recognize that transforming the entire food system requires comprehensive efforts. Factors such as agricultural practices, sustainability, distribution network, consumer behavior, policy frameworks play a significant role in changing the food system, and collaborative efforts of multiple stakeholders, including government, food producers, researchers, consumers, and so on, are needed. So do BlendHub believe that we are something special in the food industry without you? And that is where I come back to what is your role. So if we just go back to the presentation, Joaquin. So I think that's this one, yeah. So I always talk about, before that you can decide what is your role in the transformation of the food system, you have to identify what is it that you're after. I told a lot about what we have been after during all these years, and I normally say that everything is going to be transformed. We are in the moment of life that is the biggest change of human history. So all the food ingredients, and I always talk about food ingredients as the input, is coming from either agriculture, from the land, from the soil. We hear about regenerative agriculture. We hear about a lot of initiatives on actually upcycling food waste. Paco was mentioning that BlendHub has been recognized of upcycling food waste. The funny thing is that we are not upcycling food waste. We are incentivizing people in the agriculture not to throw away things. How can you avoid that with the oldest technology in the world that is drying, that is milling, and that is putting the upcycled products back into the food value chain? The other thing about food ingredients is that you see things like cell proteins being 3D printed into steaks. You see things like biotechnology. In the coming years, we will have thousands and thousands of new food ingredients coming in to feed the global planet. And we have a need that actually, together with the public-private initiatives, that these ingredients are characterized and their impact on people will be defined. We also have a huge transformation of the quality system. So the transformation of the quality system, just the small part that we have been involved in terms of chemometric brain, today we have digitized more than 1 million food products. We have uploaded them to the cloud. We have now empowered, for example, the Centro Tecnológico de la Conserva to collaborate with us and to create understanding that we have technologies that are capable of digitizing food quality that everyone can use basically on a click-to-click basis. Then, with ingredients and quality systems, what we are transforming are the food recipes. Do you think the Big Mac is the same recipe around the world? Or do you just think it is a brand? So the thing about food recipes is that we have an infinite amount of food recipes. And I was always laughing in the very beginning where people say, my recipe is very special, it's better than all the other recipes. I said, bullshit. There is no recipe that is better than others. And especially not in these times where we move towards personalized nutrition. That, by the way, is another reason why there is an incredible opportunity for empowerment in entrepreneurship, because the big companies have been producing a Maggi cube or an espresso, but personalized nutrition is a completely different game that will actually augment the quantity of recipes going into society. So huge opportunity for all of you to start entrepreneurship, or at least empower entrepreneurship. That is one of the stake and the main pillars of the Blendhub philosophy. The biggest of them all is the transformation of global supply chains. If we change input and we start changing output, we start changing behavior, we start changing consumers, we start changing what the consumers' perception of good and bad. And the most important thing around what is good and bad is, in my opinion, that the consumer go and ask for a question before they actually buy. And they normally ask the question to themselves and say, what is good for me? So when we start changing the supply chain, we actually go back to the consumer idea about how do we make a selection. And I've made this picture for all of you to reflect how consumers made the decision in the last 100 years. We actually, back in 1885, and I normally add this small story to that picture here, is that there was a gentleman called Henri Nestlé that had an incredible good purpose as an entrepreneur, because he created a blended powder that could be hydrated in water or in milk, and it could actually save lives of children. So millions of children were saved because that a gentleman invented a product that could substitute the mother milk that many mothers were not capable to give their children. The problem with this, and this is again, well, going back to that 20% of these, or these food brands produce less than 20% of the world's food, but you can see in this photo what they have done. They have created brand trust. They, in the 20s and the 30s, converted themselves into billion-dollar brand companies. That has nothing to do with food safety, food security, beyond complying with existing regulation. So I'm not criticizing what is happening. I'm just calling the attention that if we have had, for the last 100 years, a scenario where we go and select food products in the supermarket every day because we trust the brand, what the future is going to be about, in my opinion, is that the technology is going to change the way we take decisions. Purchasing decisions, going back to what Blendhub and Chemometric Brain are trying to do, is empowering small, medium enterprises using technology to act like the big multinationals. And that today is a reality. The 3 legs that we have been building on: localized food production, digitized food quality, and food as a service, is a way where we empower startups and scale-ups to actually act exactly like the built multinationals by the utilization of technology. So in the end, it's not about sitting inside a small building and create a lot of ideas and a lot of technology. In my opinion, it's about that the technology is for taking it to the market. And today, it's all about, in my opinion, speed, and it's about agility. It's not about publishing large papers. We, for example, we made recently a study together with ASTI in the Basque Country, where they called us and say, do you have a recipe with some ingredients where we want to substitute some of the ingredients that are dairy-based protein with insect-based protein and see what comes out of that? Think about that we can actually replicate that over and over again. And by the way, this case with ragi, the year of the millet in India today and the rest of the world, ragi is using 80% less water than wheat. And we are all crying that there is no wheat available. But I can tell you, we can today make bread, and next week in Food for Future, I invite all of you, if any of you are in Bilbao, to come and taste high-protein bread made with ragi, no wheat inside. So actually, technology is already changing the global food industry. The last thing I want to incentivize, if you go online, BlendHub have just been not recognized, it is not an award, but it is a big recognition for me because the EIT Food and thereby the European Union 2 weeks back have launched a challenge that is called Affordable Nutrition Challenge that incentivizes startups and scale-ups to actually utilize the BlendHub platform that we have been creating over the last 25 years to go from idea to test to validation and to launch of any food product anywhere in the world, in this case in the European Union, where BlendHub is the platform behind it. So incentivizing you and your global network, if any one of you, there is until the 15th of June to apply for this EIT challenge, and BlendHub will be the ones that are actually getting the prize. So 25,000 euros is paid for every single challenger that will be selected. We will select 10. So the value of this 10 challenge EIT BlendHub affordable nutrition will put on the table from the European Union 250,000 euros. But for the first time, after 90 days, that will be the selection will be on the 15th of July. The whole thing will start in September, and the first food products from this challenge will be on the market beginning next year. So again, where I started, think about your role. Think about how you want to interact and start actually connecting together in these events like we have today and start creating shared value propositions. Transparently shared value propositions where we look at the final food product, we look at its price, we look at the consumer behavior that we can now actually fulfill in a completely different way. And by the way, we can create shared value for our companies and for the people inside. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Rodrigo, por esa magnífica